Okay, everybody. Good evening, Democrats.
Good
Good
evening.
evening,
You're
Democrats.
here,
Good evening,
there.
Democrats.
If
Democrats.
you're online, you can stand, you can sit, whatever you want to do. See Annalisa's standing, that's fine. I see Patricia is sitting, so take your choice. Everybody is having a seat.
Hello, everybody.
There's Natalia getting us focused. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Now that you can all hear me, let's try it again. Everybody online, please unmute and good evening, Democrats.
Good
Good
evening,
evening.
Democrats.
All
Hello.
right, welcome
Oh, good evening,
everybody
Democrats.
in here, out there. Thanks for being here. Glad to have a good meeting. I'm gonna mute some people who are talking. Okay, they took care of it. Good. So thanks everybody for being here. We're gonna jump right into it. We've got a lot to get to tonight. We're gonna start with an announcement. We are in an election year, as you may know, and that doesn't just mean the national, but also means the local. So this year we are going to be starting our endorsement process earlier than ever. And there's a reason for that. Last few cycles, we've gotten some complaints from candidates that they got their official endorsement from the club too late for them to be able to put our logo on their literature that they send out, and sometimes too late for them to be able to reach out to other organizations that aren't based in Santa Monica. So we want to get started where we are going to be endorsing over the next few weeks. By 2 months from now, we'll be all completed with our endorsements. So just to give everybody a heads up on the timing of that, if you are listening to this and you know a candidate who's running for either Santa Monica City Council or Rent Control Board or College Board or School Board, this information is for those people. You got to let us know. We're going to send this out an email, but on May 3rd, we're going to send all the candidates their questionnaires, the written questionnaires. They're going to have 2 weeks to send it back, and they're going to need all 2 weeks because they're long questionnaires. we have, I said that just for you, Margaret. I know you're really looking forward to the long questionnaire. We are going to be conducting board interviews the weekend of May 25th and 26th. We will be working with every candidate to find time to sit down with our Democratic Club board and talk to you about your campaign for about 20 minutes. Those interviews will get recorded, and along with the questionnaire responses, they'll go up on our website, go up on our emails. All the members will get a chance to see what you had to say. Mark down the date, May 29th, our next membership meeting right here in this room. We're going to be doing candidate debates, Rent Control Board, School Board, College Board. Right here, you're going to hear from all the candidates who are looking for the Democratic Club endorsement. 1 week later, June 5th, you're going to have our City Council candidates debate right here in this room. After the debates are done, the board will deliberate and consider recommendations. Contrary to belief of some conspiracy theorists, we did not decide already who we're supporting. At the end of June, we're going to have a virtual meeting, Zoom only, where we're going to have our vote to make our endorsements. June 26th, 2 months and 2 days from now, we will be having our endorsements. We'll know who we're endorsing, and then we can all get to work getting out the vote for those candidates, because no matter who we support, we've got a long election season. There's a lot going on in Santa Monica right now. We have to make sure we get really good candidates who are supported by this club elected to City Council, to Rent Control Board, to College Board, and to School Board. So if you didn't write all that down, we're going to email it out. Everyone will get a chance to see it in writing, but that's what's coming up. And we wanted to make sure everyone knew that. Okay. I want to give a quick shout out to our former club president who's here tonight, Shai Roy. Hey, Shai, how's it going?
Thank you.
Of course, Shai is on our college board as well, but he's not running this year. So he's a neutral player. But I'm looking around the room, I'm seeing some other people who may be putting their hat in the ring for office this year. So we're very excited to have everybody. And we're looking forward to that process. Okay, let's kick it off so we can move on to the main event. I see our senators here in the back of the room, Ben Allen, but we'll be coming back to him in a moment. First, we're going to do our legislative committee endorsements. Let's hear from our legislative VP, Isabel Story. Isabel.
Hi, everybody. Well, as usual, our legislative committee has been very busy considering different bills. Thank you to the people doing that. So we're gonna hop right through it. You have it on a slideshow.
Oh, I can get this. Let me give
Okay. So you can see it, the bills on the screen while they, like a little summary while they talk about it. Sam, I'll introduce Sam while we're waiting. So Sam Cosolino, who's on our committee, is going to be talking about the first two bills. And let's see. Yeah, there's the page, and if you could go to the next page.
Sorry, let me get this off.
Oh, and we are going to do this the way we've done it before, consent calendar, which means we're going to describe all the bills first and then vote on them as a package. However, if there's one in particular that you have a question about or want to raise some issue, then we can separate that one out and deal with it separately later. Okay, Sam is going to talk about the first two up there.
Thank you so much, Isabel. So for SB 1338, I was approached by the president of the school board of Culver City to have the Santa Monica Democratic Club endorse this. And very important to our connection as cities and just to morals, because for 3 days during the COVID pandemic, and especially at a spike, the Omicron spike, there was a lack of teachers and then a lack of substitute teachers. So there was a closing down of the Culver City Unified School District. So because of that, and because of some funding, different things with that, there have been $1 million that have been withheld from the school district. So we're just trying to fix that wrong and make sure that the Culver City Unified School District gets enough money so that they can fund their schools. And my next bill, we're opposing this bill. It's similar to one that we had last cycle. It was AB 1814. So it sounds good because it's talking about not having the facial recognition as the only thing to have a prosecuting someone, but it actually is not even one factor right now. So it sneakily gets it to be a factor so that there could be facial recognition and then a little bit more to get someone in jail. And this has been shown to be racist and get people in jail who are innocent. So for those reasons, please consider supporting SB 1338 and opposing AB 1814. Thank you.
Okay. And now for our next bill, we're going to advance. We have our artificial intelligence expert, Dina, here to talk about a bill that she's been recommending to us and that the committee and the board have voted to support.
So I'm actually talking about Assembly Bill 2013. It's a bill that would require a developer of an artificial intelligence system to post on their internet website documentation regarding the data used to train an artificial intelligence system or service. So this is Assemblymember Jackie Irwin's AI data transparency bill for this year, and it has a hearing next Tuesday in the Assembly Privacy Committee. I'm sure many of you know that AI technologies require vast quantities of data that's been plucked from everywhere in order to be able to function. It includes all kinds of information, including everything straight up from copyrighted material to very personal information that can be found in there. HIPAA violating materials have been found. Child sexual abuse materials have been found. Even intellectual property and business dealings have been found inside of these data sets. So AI models, when they're trained on their own synthetic data outputs, collapse within 5 to 6 generations. So an ongoing stream of fresh, unique human-created data is required in order for these systems to continue and to endure. So AI companies have pretty much already consumed all of the data on the internet, and they have an ever-expanding need to gather new data from every source imaginable. They're concocting a myriad of new ways to continue gathering AI data fuel in their AI systems, and they have a vested fiscal interest in continuing to expand and collect all kinds of data from everyone, everywhere. Whether it's recording and profiling shoppers' purchasing habits through extensive video surveillance in an Amazon Fresh store, or whether it's recording our voices, likenesses, and the words we use on Zoom to sell to third-party data vendors when the Zoom AI companion is turned on, Zoom folks. Companies will continue to diversify the ways that they take data from every aspect of our lives in order to sustain their AI systems and their business models. So it's essential that consumers know where and how their data, often unknowingly, is being taken and used and sold by these AI companies without their consent. And so this is a bill that's a solid sort of concrete first step option that we can take right now to bring a little transparency to what so far has mostly been an unscrupulous, opaque, and predatory model for data acquisition. And I hope that Senator Ben Allen, who's sitting in the back of the room, and any other legislators who hear about this, I hope that they sign on immediately to become co-authors of this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next three, thank you, were actually brought to us by Culver City Democratic Club, and Leah Pressman, who's their legislative director, is not able to be here. So I'm going to do my best to describe these bills. We did vote on them in our committee and on the board. So AB 2716 is proposed by Isaac Bryan, and it's about low producing oil wells. So apparently there are tens of thousands of these across California, including some in Inglewood. And that's defined as less than 15 gallons a day. But even though they're low producing, the oil companies don't want to spend the money to cap them, so they just let them keep going. Unfortunately, these are often in low income areas affecting people of color. They have very bad health effects or higher asthma rates, lower longevity in these areas. And so what this bill does is it says that those wells have to be capped or they'll have a $10,000 a day fine. The next one is a constitutional amendment, SCA 1. It's about reforming the recall process. As you might remember, when they tried to recall Governor Newsom a while ago, that didn't succeed. But if it had succeeded, there were quite a number of candidates who did on the same ballot, and any of them could have become governor with not a majority, but a plurality of the vote. So like if there were 15 candidates, whoever got the highest votes would become the governor. It could be 10%. You know, it wouldn't have to be a majority like it would have to be in a normal election. So this encourages frivolous recall attempts. So what this bill, this constitutional amendment would do, it would change that and make it so that if the governor was recalled, he would just be replaced the normal way, as if, you know, he had vacated the office for some other reason, as if he had resigned or passed away. The lieutenant governor would just step into his place until the next election. So that's what this is about. And the next one is AB 1657, the Affordable Housing Bond Act, we all know here, we've been talking about it so many times, the great problem of homelessness and lack of affordable housing. And especially with the budget cuts this year, a lot of these programs are on the chopping block. So this is a $10 billion bond, and it would fund the state's affordable housing programs, including affordable rent housing for lower income families, home ownership opportunities, supportive housing for people experiencing homelessness. I hardly need to go into the homeless and affordable housing problem that we have. We all know about that. So yeah, in this time of a budget scarcity, this would fund those programs. It would fund, let's see, I'm gonna say how much, 120,000 affordable homes. So that is very good. So those are the bills we have. And then as a package, so last month, we had a whole meeting about the reparations, and it was actually a fantastic meeting. I was gonna say, if you missed that, I would highly recommend you go look at the video. I was at the meeting of the Racial Justice Committee, and they actually used clips from our meeting for their meeting. Because it was that good. It was really enlightening, really eye-opening, great speakers. And we did have the legislator, okay, anyway, we had one of the people from the Black Legislative Caucus, Joan Sawyer, Reggie Joan Sawyer, okay. And he outlined the bill, so I'm not gonna go in detail about all the bills. What should I say about the, are we gonna have, we have them there, so I'll just go by the categories. They looked at, okay, here's what I should explain. So a commission did a 2-year study of the long-term effects of slavery and racism throughout our history, the impact of this, and then came up with proposed legislative solutions. These 14 bills are just like the first phase of it. We can't, in fact, with 14 bills or even with more bills, we're not going to undo all the harms that have been done. But at least they looked at what can be done, how can we make a start at making some kind of amends and leveling the playing field. So in the recommendations of this committee, they broke it down into subject areas. So as far as education, these 2 bills have to do with grants for career technical education. And then let's just go on. And then there are obviously, not surprisingly, quite a few about civil rights. ACA 7, fund programs to increase life expectancy. The next one takes responsibility for slavery. The next one's about hair. It's quite an issue. Friends of discrimination based on that. Property taking, SB 1050. This one hits really close to home because we've had those cases in Huntington Beach with the Bruce family, and then now we have the Ebony Beach Club here in Santa Monica. Properties that were illegally seized in the past, and some of the descendants are now saying, hey, either we want this property back or we want some kind of reparation. So this is about, restoring property to the original owners or having some kind of remedy. And the next one is a formal apology for slavery. Okay, we can go on to the next page. Oh, do they have more civil rights? Oh, yeah. No, I just didn't change the headline. It's, these are on criminal justice reform. Okay. ACA 8 prohibits involuntary servitude for incarcerated people. This is AB 1986. This is an Isaac Bryan bill about this process of banning books in jails, that there should be transparency in that. They found some really egregious examples of, like, Mein Kampf is in the prison library, but you can't get some, book by Toni Morrison, you know, things like that. So it just has to be transparent and can be challenged. AB 2064, Jones Sawyer Bill, solutions to decrease community violence, state-funded grant program, and 2080 restricts solitary confinement. Okay, let's move on to the next one.
Isabel, can
yes.
you hear me? Isabel,
Yes,
it's Patricia. We're not hearing you very well over the microphone. Could you get it a little closer or speak a little louder, please?
oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, my folder might have been blocking the speaker. Okay, sorry about that. I'll just
Thank you so much.
everything again. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Luckily you
Keep
have
going.
slides. You had the slides. Okay. Then we have one on health. This has to do with Medi-Cal, supportive food and nutrition. Food for, let's see, oh, yeah, this is, you know, big problem in lower income communities when they close grocery stores or pharmacy, that they have to give adequate notice so that people can find another place to buy their necessities. And this is an important one for business and professional licenses, to prioritize African American applicants, especially if they're descended from someone who was enslaved. And I think that is all. Is that the last one? Okay. So as you see, quite a range in the reparations package. And we did talk about, should we just pick out a few bills? Should we support all of them? And as a committee and a board, we just decided to support the whole package. So that's what we're bringing to you tonight. So do you want to conduct a vote, or do you
We'll
want
do
me
it
to?
together.
We'll
Can
do
you-
it together.
Let's
Okay.
pull the share screen so we can see everybody.
Okay, so,
So let's do it like we did
Yeah.
last month. So there's a consent calendar, which would imply that if that passed right now, all the bills are passed. If you want to pull any for further discussion, or if you have a question about one of the bills, I saw Ford raise his hand, so he must have a good question for us. But otherwise, if anyone has any question about any of the bills, we'll pull it, and we're going to talk about that one at the end of the meeting.
yeah,
Does anyone want to pull any? I know Craig was mentioning
Very first, Culver City.
Culver City.
Culver City one. Okay, so
all
we're
right, so
we're
we
gonna
can bring that one back.
we'll pull that one. We'll talk about that one at the end. Any other polls? Okay, great. So let's have a vote on the consent calendar. So for people who are members of the club in good standing for 30 days, this is your time to shine. We're gonna have the vote. Anybody who's a California resident can vote on this, not just Santa Monica residents. So all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, we got 21 in person and we've got 10 online. So we'll call that 30.
That's 12 online.
So we'll call that 30.
There was a thumbs up that meant yes also.
Thumbs up counts.
Okay,
30.
John, I didn't vote because I'm not in the club 30 days, but my spirit supports it. Put it that
Thank
way.
you.
Appreciate that,
Thank you.
Christine. Okay,
Alright.
so everyone can lower their hand. Sure.
I'm not even a club member yet. I don't want to look like I'm a real stick.
Oh, no. You're not the only one who, isn't a member yet. Don't worry about it. Okay, so now everyone can lower their hands, and now all those who want to vote no. And Larry's hand was already up. He's not a no vote. Okay, so no nos. Any abstentions? Okay, so
Wow,
all of
pretty good.
them
Thank
except for,
you.
we're gonna come back to the
We'll
first
come
one
back
at
to
the
Culver
end.
City one.
Yeah, and Craig mentioned to me earlier, just a quick question of clarification, so we'll probably be looking at that one too. Okay. All right, next up, we are going to hear from, okay, so we sent out a couple emails about this. The issue that's been going on the west side for a long time now. There is a apartment building called Barrington Plaza, just east of Santa Monica, where the owner, the notorious landlord Douglas Emmett Inc., who's headquartered here in Santa Monica, has threatened to evict hundreds of its tenants to do upgrades that it deems necessary that it has to do right now. And I could get much more into it, but I would much rather hand it over to our friend of the club, Larry Gross from the Coalition for Economic Survival, who can explain what's going on there. And we sent out emails about this. The trial has begun here in the Santa Monica courthouse. So Larry will update us on what the latest news is with that. And I'll turn it over to you, Larry.
Thank you so much. And more than a friend of the club, I'm a proud member of the Santa Monica Democratic Club. And up until recently, I served as your regional director with the California Democratic Party, but redistricting took you out of my region, and I miss you guys. But I'm here today as executive director of the Coalition for Economic Survival. CES has been around for 51 years now. We led the effort to bring rent control to the city of Los Angeles and West Hollywood. We actually created the city of West Hollywood around rent control, and we're all about organizing tenants to empower them to fight for their rights. And so, as John mentioned, Barrington Plaza is the third largest building in the city of Los Angeles, one of the largest buildings in the state. And for many years, the owner of that building, Douglas Emmett, has been trying to get the tenants out because there were a couple of fires there. And they were looking which way. They wanted an exemption from rent control. They did this, that, and the other, and the city just kept shutting the doors on them. So they figured, well, what they could then do is put like $1.5 million into campaign chests to support our new city attorney, as well as the city council member who oversees that district, Tracy Park. And soon after she was elected on May 8th of last year, Douglas Emmett served all the tenants with Ellis Act evictions. And so for people who don't know the Ellis Act, it's a state bill. It allows landlords to go out of the rental business. It was actually in response to Santa Monica's rent control law, which didn't allow people to go out of the rental business. And then the law was passed to allow small landlords to go out of the rental business who could no longer operate their property. The law has been totally corrupted and being used by corporate landlords and speculators to target rent control buildings, to purchase them, evict the tenants, and then convert them to luxury housing. So in the case of the Barrington Plaza, which is 712 units, it also sits in the Senate district of Senator Ben Allen, who's been incredibly supportive, both morally and financially to the tenants union. They were trying to evict so they can get people out so they could put in fire sprinklers. Now there's a provision in the rent control ordinance that allows for this type of work called the tenant habitability plan, which we fought for and won, which allows a landlord to make these type of repairs, to move tenants out and make the repairs and then move tenants back in. They find them relocation housing at the same rents in a 5-mile radius. And then the tenants get a small increase. So the Ellis Act states that you have to go out of the rental business permanently, which they are not doing. They have no intention of doing, and they're just trying to use it as a way to get the tenants out, to renovate the building and jack up rents. So what we assisted the tenants in organizing a tenants association, Barrington Plaza Tenants Association. We've gotten great support from the Santa Monica Democratic Club. So we thank you for that. And tenants filed a lawsuit to contest the fact that they were illegally using the Ellis Act because they're not permanently going out of the rental business. And so that lawsuit is now in Santa Monica court. It just began last week. We're like 4 days in or something. And we're dealing with the witnesses from Barrington Plaza and Douglas Emmett. And we may be in for the long haul. We're feeling good about this. And I just wanted to bring Monique Gomez on here because she's a leader with the Tenant Association, and she's dealing with this situation firsthand, all the harassment, all the ways that Douglas Emmett is trying to push people out. There's a good core that are still there. It's about 150 tenants still in there. But let me just say the importance of this lawsuit, because it's not just about Barrington Plaza. If Douglas Emmett prevails, every tenant in a rent-controlled apartment throughout the state will have a target on their back, because then landlords would be able to use the Ellis Act to merely renovate their units and evict the tenants. There's a lot at stake here. And so people recognize that. And so we're at the front lines of trying to ensure this tenants' right. I mean, the Ellis Act is bad as it is. This would open the door to making it even worse. So Monique, if you could come on.
I'm here.
Right.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everyone here, just for the support, including Senator Ben Allen, Larry, the Coalition for Economic Survival. Just wanted to give you guys a quick update on what's been happening with our trial and how incredible our community resilience has been. And right now we're knee deep into the courtroom. I don't even want to say drama, but maybe trial. Let's just put it that way. And we're fighting against the wrongful use of the Ellis Act. And every day is a roller coaster of emotions for tenants, both that are still here and those who have already vacated. And I'm sitting here in my apartment right now, still here at Barrington Plaza. But we're fighting against the wrongful use of the Ellis Act. And every day is a roller coaster of emotions, as I said, and we're holding our ground like champs. Your support has been a lifeline to us and keeping us pumped and positive, even on the toughest days. It's amazing to see how we've come together, not just as neighbors, but as family, as a community, facing this mass eviction head on against a $3 billion corporate company. We can't thank you all enough for your support. You are greatly, greatly appreciated. And I don't even know how to even thank you guys, but just want to send you, from all of the tenants here who are current, who are former, thank you.
Great. And let me just say, this is the largest Ellis eviction in the history of the state and the law. And if tenants prevail, which we are confident they will get to stay there. And all the tenants that have been evicted so far or left will have the right to move back in, and they will have a huge wrongful eviction lawsuit against Douglas Emmett. So we're looking forward to that. As Monique said, we're in Santa Monica Courthouse. We're there almost every day. Mondays the courtroom is dark. We're in Department Department O in front of Judge Ford. The judge seems to be a fair judge who knows the law. And we have a dynamic lawyer, Fran Campbell, who's just a powerhouse, who does our tenants' rights clinic and is one of the most fierceful tenants' rights attorney in the state. And so with that, we invite people to join us at the courthouse if you have some time. It's every day except Mondays at 1:30, and it might be going on for a long time.
Great. Well, thanks so much for the update, Larry. Thanks for being here. Especially grateful to hear from Monique as well. And I know that our members will be paying close attention to this, and hopefully we'll be able to join you at the courthouse too. So
Great, thank you. And when we win this, we're going to look to the senator there in the room to pass and author legislation to close these loopholes and hopefully amend the Ellis Act so it doesn't do this type of damage in the future. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
all right, thanks, Monique. Okay, so we have one more piece of business before we get to the senator. We wanted to take a vote tonight on a item that's going on here in Santa Monica. So for those of you who have been members for 2 years or longer, you remember that 2 years ago, this club was an early supporter of a local ballot measure called Measure GS. And I, along with our former mayor, Sue Himmelrich, and our membership VP, Michael Soloff, were the 3 proponents of this ballot measure. And if you don't remember, this was a one-time sales tax on each time something, a housing building is sold on any property worth more than $8 million. And that money goes towards preventing homelessness, creating affordable housing, and going to our public school system. It was a tough fight to get it on the ballot. Mayor Himmelrich was the only member of the council at the time who supported it. And we went door to door gathering signatures, and this club early on voted to support the signature gathering effort before we even voted about whether to support the measure. We supported the signature gathering effort. Ever since then, as soon as it passed overwhelmingly by the residents of Santa Monica, this measure has faced additional hurdles. There was lawsuits, there was opposition from our current council members, of course, not all of them, but some of them, who don't want to see this measure implemented. They don't want to see more affordable housing in Santa Monica. And now we are facing a new ballot measure from somebody who is known to some of you in the room, former Mayor Pam O'Connor. She is working with developers to put a measure on the ballot that would amend Measure GS. And long story short, the amendments would exempt multifamily buildings. When multifamily buildings are sold, they would not be applied to this tax. What does that mean? It means that a large number of the buildings that this tax is designed to collect money from would no longer be applicable, and therefore it would decrease dramatically the amount of revenue that we can generate every year for Measure GS. And it's not a surprise that this is being put forward by developers, because they don't want to see this tax on there, because it of course goes to them. And we're talking about people who are selling buildings that are worth more than $8 million. So I think it's safe to say that they have the money to be able to pay this tax. And this money is going to the least among us in our community. This club has always been a champion of prioritizing the people who live in Santa Monica, who aspire to live in Santa Monica, who are the least among us, who can't afford to buy multi-million-dollar homes. And what we wanted to do is to make sure that Measure GS finally gets to be fully implemented and use that revenue the way it's designed to be used. But if this ballot measure goes on the ballot in November, we going to have another big fight about this. And ultimately, if it were to pass, we could potentially see much less revenue than expected. And eventually people would say Measure GS was a failure because it didn't bring in as much money as we wanted. So before we get to the actual ballot measure, hopefully it doesn't ever come on the ballot. And so we're not going to take up whether we support the ballot measure tonight, because if we did, we would want to give the other side fair time to address you as members. Instead, we're doing the same thing we did 2 years ago with Measure GS. We are asking the club to take a position to oppose the signature gathering efforts of this amendment to Measure GS. And I've seen online not only people who support Measure GS, but people who actually opposed Measure GS 2 years ago, who are saying, whether or not you support Measure GS, we still want the money to be coming in and collected and distributed equitably. So we are asking to have the club take an official position that we oppose the signature gathering efforts. And therefore, we'll be able to send out to our email list and supporters to tell everyone we know, don't sign this petition. And if you accidentally did already, if you were at the supermarket and someone was there, here's how you can fill out a form to get your signature withdrawn from that petition. So I saw Craig has a question. Yeah.
Yeah, for the record, is it just a petition or does this thing have a name yet?
There is a name. It's sort of a generic name, like restoring.
For the purposes of making a motion.
Yeah, well, so the name is something like restoring affordability of housing or something like that, but it's just not specific. I think what we want to do is make a motion that was recommended by our board, which is to have the club take a position to oppose signature gathering efforts on the currently proposed amendments to Measure GS.
I'll move that the club make such a motion.
Okay, so
I'll
Craig
second
made the
that, but could I
motion.
also answer Craig's question?
Yeah, 1 second. So Craig made a motion. Kevin will give you the second. Mike is going to answer your question additionally, and then I'll go to Anastasia after that.
I just wanted to say, and it's particularly appropriate since Senator Allen's here, who carried the bill that put this requirement into state law. The initiative is required to disclose who are the funders of that committee name. They have not done that. They have not put out, which they're legally obligated to do, who the top funders are. That's itself illustrative of the type of phony tactics that are going on here. But so that's why, Craig, we can't tell you for certain who's funding it, but we've already raised that with the city attorney. We'll be raising it with the FPPC. And we all have heard that it's certain developers in town that are funding this. But right now they're violating the law in the signature gathering process, as Senator Allen can tell you.
Anastasia, yeah.
And for anyone who wants to share the information, former Mayor Sue Himmelrich put the form on her social media today. I shared it. You can reshare it in case anyone who sees your social media has signed it and wants to rescind their signature. So you can go look for it on Instagram and Facebook.
John, could you have people come up in front if they're going to make a long comment, please?
Don't worry about it. So we will do that. Hang on. So just to reiterate for Zoom, Anastasia said the former Mayor Himmelrich put the form to withdraw on her social media. If this measure passes, we will also send it out in our email blast on Friday. Mitchell?
I think they get around it is when somebody sells their property, they're taxed. They're taxed anyway through IRS. But if the tax goes through, there's going to be less incentive for money, profits to go into something else. Usually, a lot of times, housing, because people are in the housing business. So this may be a disincentive to create more housing.
Well, that's exactly it. And so Mitchell mentioned that the idea here is if this amendment goes through, it would be a disincentive to create more housing. Right? Okay.
Yeah. Explain how it would go the other way. I mean, if you take away the profit from somebody, they use that net profit to do something with.
Well, so in this case with Measure GS, the money that's collected by the tax would go to specific revenue the revenue goes to specific programs designated in the bill or in the measure, creating housing affordability, preventing homelessness, creating affordable housing, and I believe 20% of it, potentially more, goes to the school district. It's not a state, it's just a city measure.
And the money goes back to the IRS and state. the state representatives can do tax incentives for builders to build more housing.
Mike, are you able to hear Mitchell's comment? Okay.
No, if there's a question, you have to repeat it, so none of us online can hear.
Understood. So Mitchell's basically saying that if it wasn't for Measure GS, then the revenue that would be collected by the state would be able to be used for building tax incentives for creating more housing that way.
There's no connection between state revenues and this. This is a local additional tax measure that generates additional tax revenues, generated unaudited $28 million last year, 10 million for our schools and 18 million for affordable housing and homelessness prevention programs in a time of a down real estate economy that has no impact on state revenues.
Can I reply to that?
You come up here so that Mike can hear you. Well, if
This would come from if your senators were on the ball, they would do this.
But okay, I'm not going to say that my senator's not on the ball. He's sitting right behind you. He said, but you know, this is irrelevant because the state has its method of taxing. And this is a scenario where the city of Santa Monica is generating its own tax to use here in Santa Monica above and beyond what the state is doing. I think we all can agree, even the senator would agree, that there's a lot the state could be doing to generate more housing in this in California. And this is a situation where Santa Monica is taking it into its own hands. That's what Measure GS is all about.
Take away the incentive for builders.
Okay, so Mitchell points out that it would take away the incentive for builders. I mean, I understand your point, but again, it's, as Mike said, it's sort of two different revenue streams, the state and the city doing its own thing. Yeah, Craig.
Let me restate the motion since I'm now clear. I move that we recommit.
You can come up, yeah.
I move that we stand pat in support of Major GS and oppose any efforts to alter or in some way skew what benefits Measure GS would want us to bring to the city.
Great. Thank you so much, Craig. And it's already been seconded by Kevin. So unless there's any additional discussion, I think let's have the vote. Only Santa Monica residents can, no, that's not true. We're not voting on the measure itself. This is a vote on what the club will do. So any member of the club at all, even if you don't live in California, can vote in this measure, in this vote. Okay. Let's have the hands. All in favor?
Okay, so I can vote.
Okay, we have 24 in person,
I see 11 hands raised online.
11 and 12 online, so 24 and 12 is 36. Any thumbs ups? Okay. Yeah, okay, so we'll call it 27. Everyone can lower their hands. Okay. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. So thank you, everybody. Oh, a hand went up. Yeah, Robin. Are you casting a vote there? Okay. Well, let us know if you have a question in the chat and we can try to address it. Okay.
No, I didn't. I raised, my thing didn't work.
Okay.
No, I raised my hand opposing.
Okay. So we have one vote opposed.
No, I'm for, I'm against. I'm in favor with everybody else.
Okay, great.
Yes.
It's the unanimous. You want to be able to, I mean, if you can, you want to be able to say unanimous. So great. So
Yeah.
thanks, Robin. We appreciate it. Okay.
So is that unanimous?
It's a unanimous vote. So thank you, everybody. We're gonna be getting word out about how you can help out. And we appreciate the support. Okay, so now we're gonna get to the main event of the evening. Really pleased to have Senator Allen back with us, and Senator Allen is someone who I've known basically longer than anybody else in this room except Shai, who's not there. So now he is the longest. But I mean, I first started getting involved in California politics right when I moved to Santa Monica. Senator Allen, then school board member Allen, was an early mentor of mine who, you know, helped me get involved in the state party. And then I remember being at my first or second convention up in Sacramento, and we were going on a tour of the Capitol building. We were going on a tour of the governor's mansion, and he was not Senator Allen yet. Like I said, he was just the Santa Monica. He was just, you know, someone I knew from Santa Monica. And all of a sudden he said, you know, John, we got to get you on the Democratic Club board. And he called up the former president of the club, Julie Dodd, and he said, you know, let's get this guy, John Katz, on the board. And she said yes. And then the next thing I knew, I came to a board meeting at Jay Johnson's house. And a month later, I was on the board. And little did everybody know, a few years later, I'd be taking control of the whole thing.
Not my fault.
And it's so I know there's some people watching this who really don't like me. And if so, blame Senator Allen. But I'm really glad to call him a friend. He's been in the state legislature for 10 years now. I remember the convention when he was running the first time. It was this big field of 7 candidates, and they were all heavy hitting candidates. No one knew how it was going to go. And I remember going in the room, and it was just a defensive move. We were trying to prevent Betsy Butler from getting the endorsement. I'll say it. She was the front runner at the time. And you know, no one knew it, but you know, he is now chairing all these committees, and we're going to talk about tonight all the great work he's doing in Sacramento. So we're really glad to have you. Please put your hands together for Senator Ben Allen. Or you want to stand? Well, I'm gonna move this there so that we have more space. Okay, great. So no, it's all good. So yeah, whatever you sit, stand, whatever you want. I'll move the camera for everybody. And yeah, go ahead and start.
No, stand right there and then yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm gonna move it anyway.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. So nice to see everyone. A lot of wonderful, friendly faces, and this club does mean a great deal to me. I served on the executive board here for some time, and I remember all those meetings at Jay's place. It was what a wonderful memories. And so it's a great club, and I'm just glad that everyone's still doing all this great work. And
Ben, this is Patricia, and I'm going to interrupt you because we can't hear a word you're saying. Could you please speak louder? And welcome.
Or is the where's the volume go out? Could we put the?
It's not a portable one. It's built in.
Let's just turn the
So I may
volume
have
on.
to-
We may bring it back. We may bring it back. Trying to give a wide view of it for everybody, but it may not work.
Okay, here we are. It's gonna be too loud. I think we probably have.
Just we'll,
Yeah.
you know, we tried something new, and
Yeah.
that's
There we go.
okay. So here you go. But
And where's the mic?
don't, yeah, it's, you go back down a little bit, but then here, do this.
And then the mic
That's
is
yours.
basically.
Is right here. Okay.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Okay. I'm gonna put this here, so this, sure. Okay, great. All right, there we go. Do you want to turn it back down again, just because, sorry. All right, so I'm literally fresh off a flight from Sacramento. We've been in the middle of committee madness. And there are lots, all the bills are literally having to, this is the House of Origin deadline, they say, for committee bills that are going to be heading toward the Appropriations Committee. So most significant bills are being voted on right now. I just had a very long day and got on the plane, and here I am. So it's really good to be back home. Just a couple of things I want to mention with regards to our bill package. I'm chair of the Environmental Quality Committee and been really working hard on environmental issues since I got started in the legislature. I serve on the Natural Resources and Water Committee. Also been co-chair of our Environmental Caucus. Many of you know about the big plastics bill that we got done a couple of years ago, SB 54, which I'm really proud of, that basically creates a extended producer responsibility to make the producers of all this crap that keeps getting pumped out of our onto our market. Basically those producers have responsibility. They have to take responsibility for the end use of their products. And now with that bill having been passed and it's now under implementation, we're trying to expand that model to many other types of products. I'm working on a bill right now to enforce extended producer responsibility for household hazardous waste. A lot of cleaning products, for example, that are actually end up being very toxic, especially if they're when they end up in bottles that end up getting thrown into the landfills and they create a whole slew of problems. People sometimes are even going so far as to dumping these things into their drains, which is incredibly damaging to our water system. And so we're once again trying to get the producers to have some skin in the game as to the proper disposal of these products. We've got another bill on electric vehicle batteries. Once again, extended producer responsibility. Some of my colleagues are not picking up the baton with textiles and food and UV, solar panels as well. So I'm excited about all that work that's underway. We're doing a lot of work at the state level in the biodiversity space. The 30 by 30 goals have become a major priority for the governor, which is really exciting. This is this whole idea that we're going to have 30% of our lands conserved by 2030. And it continues to be a real priority for me. But we do know, of course, that a lot of our public lands also, really suffer from a major backlog of needed maintenance projects. One of the things that I think about a lot is our poor state park system, which is such a gem, and yet it suffered from such chronic underinvestment over the years. Really important, something that's beloved by people in our state, and yet something really struggling financially, and they just haven't gotten the money that they need. So we've got a bill that it seeks to create a stewardship fund, SB 1332, that is going to allow for public and private investments into an endowment that will specifically help with operations and maintenance of California's treasured state parks. By the way, since you're taking notes, the EV batteries EPR bill, the EV batteries extended producer responsibility bill is SB 615, and the household hazardous waste one is SB 1143. All right. We've talked about, affordable housing continues to be a massive challenge. I wanted to thank Larry Gross for his leadership on that very righteous cause that they have there, trying to fight back and this egregious abuse of the Ellis Act. I mean, certainly a very clear violation of the spirit of the Ellis Act at the very least. I mean, the idea is that there are these really high penalties for letting folks back in after you've Ellis. For basically conversion after you've Ellis people after just 1 or 2 years, but the penalties drop so significantly after several years that the developer, the landlord there is clearly decided that it's just worth them, eating the cost of those fines if they wait for a while before letting before opening the property back up to the market. And it is such a grotesque violation of the Ellis Act, at least its spirit. And so I'm really hoping that they're going to prevail in court. We've been doing a lot of work on trying to help make sure that we continue to encourage affordable housing. I've got SB 469, which basically broadens the means by which affordable housing can be funded. And we're also seeking to pass SB 588, which would exempt new low-income housing properties owned by eligible nonprofit organizations in LA County, basically exempt them from the $20 million welfare tax exemption cap. One of the challenges that we have is that properties in LA are so expensive. They're so expensive that when the state put this $20 million cap on basically protecting people from Prop 13 liability. So the idea being that when you are purchasing a building in order to turn it into low-income housing, you want to make sure that you're not, it's a very different kind of purchase than when you're purchasing a building to redevelop. So we wanted to allow folks to not have to pay a massive new tax liability on properties that they buy that they're going to develop for affordable housing. There was a $20 million cap put on that rule, but of course in places like LA, you can buy a massive apartment building in downtown LA that will sometimes cost more than that. And then all of a sudden, the folks that want to put in affordable housing are smacked with a massive new tax liability, which disincentivizes the transfers to affordable housing. So we're working on that. Working on SB 1406 clarifies, expands protections for assisted living residents, including limits on annual rate increases for seniors that are in assisted living facilities. Working a lot on democratic institution strengthening. Some of you guys know that I did the Voters' Choice Act back in 2016, which created this new model where we can all vote in vote centers, and you get your ballot sent to you by mail. And we also are allowed to vote anywhere you want in the county for 10 days before election day at these various vote centers that were set up all over the place. And it's really created a lot more flexibility in the system. And I'm really, really happy about it. I mean, I certainly, it's provided a lot more opportunities for people to vote than the old model where you could only vote in one place at one time on one day. A lot of working people, especially, are people with families. It's really hard to have the flexibility to make that work. And you see other states moving in that other direction where you were trying to restrict access to voting. We're trying to make it more accessible. Though I'm excited, I'm happy about the model, but we're now working to try to make some fixes. There was a task force that we want to reestablish, and we're working on a number of administrative issues to get that bill stronger. We also talked. I'm glad Michael Soloff brought up some of the disclosure work I've done over the years. We've now introduced a new disclosure bill, SB 1422, with the California Clean Money Campaign, which requires entities that sponsor trips with legislators to report whether donors attended the trips, as well as the amount of their donation. So these are just a couple of the things that we've been working on. There's a lot happening also in front of my committee on environmental issues and climate leadership, all the rest. Obviously, the big issues that we're dealing with right now beyond the bills are just the budget, which is a rough situation. We had record surpluses in 21 and 22, totaling more than $100 billion. Now we have this deficit that is pretty significant, depending on how you count it. There's lots of different estimates that are out there. There's a lot of reasons why this happened. Of course, the market dramatically dropped in 22. It was a rough year for the market, a lot less IPOs. I'm learning a lot about how dependent we are on the tech sector for a lot of the gravy in the budget. When they have good years, we do well as a state. When they go down, we go down, and it's really caused a lot of challenges as we're trying to figure out how to balance the budget, without making major cuts, but without having to really, the governor, is very opposed to tax increases. So there's a lot of tension that's at play right now in this whole conversation. I will say that I do think the governor created a budget that does ultimately keep a lot of core programs whole, right? Education, environmental programs, healthcare programs. The challenge, of course, is that he's taking some risks. The idea being that the market was down in 22, but it's certainly rebounded in 23, 24. So it's worth not making massive cuts right now, because the hope is that we're going to have much better revenue projections, revenues coming in over the next couple of months, with tax day having just passed, and that, so we'll be in a better place, and we'll be able to kind of manage our way out of this deficit. But it's certainly a massive challenge. I spent a wonderful Saturday morning just a week or two ago with the trustees from Santa Monica College, some of whom are here, and we talked about all the financial challenges faced by the college and all that we can do to help them with all their important programs. But it's just one example of all the follow-on impacts when we have a downturn. So those are some of the things that are at play right now up in Sacramento. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you ever have a challenge with any issue relating to state government. We've literally helped thousands and thousands of people, access economic support, unemployment benefits, tax refunds, small business loans, all those kinds of things, especially during the pandemic. But we continue to help people. And I do want to point out two really wonderful public servants working in my office, Nick over here, Nick Ferries, and Sam Liu, of course, who so many of you know. Give him a round of applause. Nick just joined our team, and it's most of you all know Sam, of course. He's a wonderful veteran of our work. But Nick is also just joined us, and he's actually a born and bred Santa Monica boy, and went to Samo High and went off to the East Coast, and is now back here working with us, which is really, really fantastic. So please do get to know them. Please do reach out to them, connect with us on all of our socials and all the rest. But I'm looking forward to lots of questions and dialogue with the group.
Thank you. So, hang on, I'm gonna see a couple people in the waiting room, letting them in. Okay, so, we got a lot of questions online, so, I'm not gonna call on folks at the beginning. If we have time at the end, we'll go to hands, but, almost every question here comes from somebody who submitted it online, just so everyone knows. The first question I wanted to touch on, you touched on the Ellis Act, in your remarks there, and of course, we just heard from Larry Gross about what's going on with Barrington Plaza. So several people have written in asking when are you going to author meaningful Ellis Act reform legislation?
Yeah, I've been very supportive of all the previous efforts to either repeal or reform the Ellis Act, Costa-Hawkins as well. I think, we've just continued to run into brick walls, but I'm always open to looking for new ways to try to see what kind of changes we can make. I mean, one of the things that Larry just mentioned, I think is a good idea, is to really zero in on the loophole that's being exploited by the landlord right now. I think that's a potential area for work. The other thing is, I would like to see us increase the penalties associated with on the out years, right? As I mentioned when I was talking about the way the Ellis Act is framed, you are penalized significantly if you return your property to the market after Ellising people after a year or two, but the penalty drops significantly over time. And I think if we maintain a higher penalty over time, it will discourage or at least disincentivize this particular type of behavior. So we're looking at in that kind of through that lens right now, but certainly really supportive of and hopeful for success at the law, with the lawsuit, and that will also help to influence our decision as we move forward. There have been several significant attempts to repeal or reform aspects of the Ellis Act that I've been an active participant in, supporter of, and co-author of in many incidences. They've all really struggled. And so the challenge here is, how, and the dynamics continue to shift. The legislature is more progressive than it was. So I don't think we can get too locked into a certain thought just because something struggled a couple of years ago, it will continue to struggle. But it's been a hard area to do work, I think, as everybody on this call knows, and anyone who's been involved with SMER knows as well. So I'm certainly open to dialoguing with folks and working with folks to try to figure out a path that we can get through the legislature.
Great, thank you. So also earlier this evening, we voted as a club to support the series of bills put forward by the Black Caucus to address reparations. And as you know, last month, since you were helpful in getting Assemblymember Joan Sawyer to be there with us, he presented those bills as part of our larger program around reparations. Have you taken a position on those bills, and do you have any thoughts, in addition to just that package of bills, how to do right by victims of past racist actions taken by the state or local jurisdictions, such as the Ebony Beach Club issue that we're facing here in Santa Monica?
Yeah, thank you. So, obviously I've a number of the bills are just introduced. I've already voted for a couple of them. Most of the bills, as you'll notice, were assembly side bills, so I haven't seen them yet. But for example, the SB 1089, the Smallwood Cuevas bill on food injustice, just voted for in committee yesterday at the Judiciary Committee. Similarly, the Bradford bill, SB 1050, came before us in Judiciary, and I voted for that as well. So, I take a long, hard look at every bill that comes to me, but in general, I'm very, supportive of this work, and I'm really glad that the meeting went well last month, and I appreciate your flexibility. I was supposed to come in and speak last month, and then a family commitment came up, and we shuffled quickly to get a great reparations program together. So I'm excited about that. One of the, so we're all these bills are making their way through. I can only imagine that most, if not all, of these will go through. you know, obviously, the budget year is creating a lot of challenges for everything. I mean, any bill with a major price tag or even a smaller price tag is going to be viewed with a lot of skepticism from both the Appropriations Committee and the governor, and everyone's made that really clear. So that's one thing to just keep in mind as these things make their way through. But and one thing I do want to mention, I'm actively involved with an effort right now that I think has a pretty important reparations component to it, which is back in the 1940s, right after World War II, when GIs were coming home, a lot of Black families were trying to take advantage of federal incentives to get public housing. There was a measure that was put into the state constitution, Article 34, that you know, basically they feared integration into their neighborhoods as a result of post-World War II public housing initiatives. And it's over many years. It's basically restricted the construction of public housing in California by requiring voter approval of any individual project that's funded with taxpayer dollars. And we're seeking to get that out of the Constitution. We've got a measure that's headed to the November ballot. It may have to get rewritten a little bit to increase its chances, but I'm very involved with this effort to repeal Article 34, and it's certainly very much part of the broader reparations push.
Great, thanks. Well, while we're talking about Article 34, I had a question on there, so I'll just skip ahead. Can you talk about how that affects affordable housing development as well?
Sure, yeah. Oh, and I should mention, you mentioned I mean, the Bruce's Beach issue down in Manhattan Beach was a very important milestone. I co-authored the bill that facilitated the transference of the land. It required a state bill because you know, the counties were not allowed to just kind of give away land. So it was a part of that process, and that was and I think they really it ultimately came to a pretty good solution, which is that the land continues to be publicly utilized, you know, and open to the public for enjoyment, but they're also, you know, the family's getting compensated for that use of the public. So, you know, how does it affect affordable housing? Well, Article 34 has basically created another barrier that makes it harder for affordable housing to get developed. It's so challenging to get affordable housing developed in so many ways. There's not enough money. There's so much more money to be made in through market rate housing and luxury and high-end housing. And so everything we can do to take down barriers to the construction of affordable housing, I think is going to be helpful. The bond was discussed earlier. That certainly providing money for this work is an important part of it. But I also think that in the end of the day, even whatever we can provide as a state is going to be a drop in the bucket in terms of the needs on the financial side. So part of what we have to do is lower barriers to this work, and that's part of why, you know, I've been doing this work with Susie Shannon that, you know, on that I mentioned earlier, that has to do with not disincentivizing you know, the purchase of properties that you want to then turn into affordable housing. So it's an incredibly important issue, and a lot of our work has to focus on the important work of lowering barriers to the development of affordable housing.
Okay, great, thanks. So moving on, we wanted to ask you about your bill SB 1297, which will increase speed safety programs, including speeding cameras. The Democratic Club endorsed the bill last month, and we joined a coalition of other progressive organizations here in Santa Monica that asked you to add more Santa Monica streets to the bill. And we thank you for listening and following through. You did add them, but unfortunately, in the end, those additional locations were removed. I was wondering if you could kind of walk us through the sausage making there. I mean, what happened behind closed doors or during the negotiations that forced those streets to be taken out of the bill?
Yeah.
And then the obvious follow-up question is, what other state level solutions are there to protect pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers on our streets?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And gosh, I mean, this whole thing really hit us all hard when we've all suffered through terrible traffic accidents in our area. And you know, I was serving on the school board when little Emily Shane was just mowed down on the PCH. She was one of our students. You know, and I'm actually working a lot with her father now, and every time I see him, I just remember that moment when I first heard that news. And of course, that trauma was reignited for all of our friends up in Malibu when those four young women at Pepperdine were killed by a young man who just was driving at like 104 miles an hour, lost control of his vehicle, just smashed them up, killed them. I mean, it was just a terrible, terrible thing. And you know, I can't even imagine. I mean, I now have my own kid. I got a little girl coming next month, and I just, you know, it's and I've been working with these parents, and to think about the you put your life and soul into these little things, and then to have someone who's having a bad day or just wants to be reckless, take that person, that child away from you in one moment is just so heartbreaking. And so we really, you know, so that incident started this whole push to try to really get serious about the PCH. You know, so there was a speed camera program that we introduced. Henry Stern introduced a bill that would give additional points, you know, for folks that speed way above the speed limit. And we introduced the bill. Santa Monica reached out to us, Beverly Hills reached out to us, WeHo reached out to us, and we expanded the bill to include state highways in those 3 additional cities. Now, the chair of the Transportation Committee just was not, you know, there continues to be just a very little. So Laura Friedman did a bill that created this initial pilot program for speed cameras. That was AB 645. And it allowed 6 cities to do speed cameras in high accident corridors. And it was passed after several failed iterations. One of the challenges, the law enforcement unions don't like it because they say, and I just had a long chat with one of the head of the the county the state CHP union. They see it as taking away jobs. You know, I mean, from my perspective, it's like we need both. You know, we need more CHP on the PCH and we need the cameras. But, you know, so there's a law enforcement union challenge, and then ACLU has, and there's some various civil liberties groups that have challenges too, because they just, in general, don't like additional cameras, you know, around in our society. And so that's been so we've been kind of facing headwinds from both of those sides. And there's just been little appetite on the part of you know, various powers that be in Sacramento. Certain people, I mean, quite frankly, it's really the 2 chairs of the transportation committees. Most members of the legislature really want to see these things move because we've all experienced these kinds of tragedies in our districts. And we see that in the end of the day, this is really about focusing on getting people to slow down. These work. I mean, the studies show that they work. But the new chair, you know, I mean, the chair of the Senate Trans, you know, they basically said, well, you said this was initially about Malibu, so I want to focus on Malibu. If you want to come back to me next year with other cities, then I'm fine with that. The data from the PCH is the kind of most egregious in terms of speeding, partly because you can speed so easily. I mean, it's you know, it's quite frankly, it's hard to speed through Beverly Hills, right? I mean, you got a red light every, you know, stopping you on Santa Monica Boulevard. You know, I've tried to get home from, you know, being out, you know, when I was younger. I mean, I know, but you know, whereas the PCH, we all know, it's just got these long stretches of opportunity for folks to just go way too fast. We got CHP now, so CHP had not been on the PCH for years, since the founding of the city of Malibu. They used to patrol, but then the city decided to strike a deal with the sheriffs. And but CHP, the sheriffs are underfunded. You know, we didn't have enough people out there. CHP has been out there. They've been giving out hundreds and hundreds of tickets because of speeding. One of the challenges we have in this whole conversation, the Assembly Transportation Chair, who's actually a member of the Black Caucus and is doing one of the reparations bills, has traditionally opposed speed cameras because she sees this as an equity issue, because I think oftentimes some of this traffic enforcement ends up impacting people of color. But the data we're showing from Malibu is there's not an equity issue up there. There's a lot of young white guys, quite frankly, that are just going too damn fast and putting everyone's lives at risk. And so I'm hopeful that this new data, we're going to just try to flood these folks this information and try to get them to see the wisdom of what we're trying to do and the importance of what we're trying to do. And I'm just going to keep plugging away. I was disappointed, but this was forced upon the bill. It was forced upon the bill by the transportation chair. And, you know, we're just going to try to get this thing done for Malibu and then try to see what we can do, you know, in the next couple of years to get it expanded. But I really appreciated the club support. I appreciated SMERS support. You know, we're just going to have to continue to work on this.
Great, thanks. So now a question from one of our club members. I see he's on the call. He said, thanks for being a champion on the transition to electric vehicles and home charging for renters. In Santa Monica, the average quote I received to install a level 2 charger is $3,800, and Santa Monica's rebate is only $1,500. So many renters are faced with spending thousands of dollars upgrading infrastructure in buildings they don't own. So what can be done at the state level to make home installation more affordable for renters?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And you know, and the other thing, we also don't do enough to right now, so many of the costs of electrification are being thrown into our electricity bills, which is creating all the wrong incentives. So I'd love to partner with whoever asked that question, who you know.
Kurt Gonska.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Good looking guy. There he is. All right.
He's on my rent control.
Okay, Kurt. Yeah, I'd like to work with you because I've done some work in this space. You know, I did a bill the couple years ago to basically require new multi-unit construction to at least wire the garages for electricity, so that, you know, not even requiring the installation, but to wire. I've done a couple others. That by the way, that bill was killed by the kind of some of the builders because they say, oh, it's going to increase the cost of building housing, even though it was a minuscule additional cost compared to rewiring, by the way. I mean, it's so much more expensive to put in wiring once the building's been built. So sometimes the left hand's not talking to the right hand. We're trying to meet climate goals, but we're also trying to meet housing construction goals. But you know, sometimes one side trumps the other. But there has been some work in this space to try to but it really is a challenge because, as you say, you know, we've tried to make it harder for landlords to prevent this from happening. There was cases where we had landlords actively stopping folks from doing this, and over time we've been really whittling away and trying to, you know, prevent them from stopping it. But then the question comes down to incentives, and I'd love to talk to you about it. I mean, the money's going to be tight this year. But let's have a conversation and see how I can be helpful, because this is obviously something I care a lot about. And the only way we're going to make this electricity transition work, this clean energy transition work, is if it's really accessible to everyone, not just homeowners, you know, who've got single family homes. I mean, the massive challenge here is with so many people live in multifamily, so many people are renters, and so many landlords are simply just not willing to be helpful. And as you say, the installation is expensive. So, you know, it's so expensive. I haven't done it myself. I mean, I literally keep my little plug-in charger that I plug into the wall, and I just charge it overnight. But of course it means that you know, if I need to charge quickly, I gotta go to, you know, I gotta go to fast charger somewhere else.
Okay, thanks. So I want to go to another bill authored by your colleague, Scott Wiener, SB 423. The club endorsed that one. It would streamline approvals of housing projects in cities that haven't met their RHNA goals or adopted a compliant housing element. So Santa Monica, as many of us remember, briefly fell into that window last year, and what was called the builder's remedy, where 15 projects, massive skyscrapers, were proposed without any local control or review. Thankfully, those projects went away once we came back into compliance. So you, first of all, you didn't vote yes or no on that bill. You were not present. So why not? And then also, what's your take on the policy?
Yeah, I actually was present, but I purposely chose not to vote for the bill, and I'll tell you the reason. I agreed with the core goals of the bill. The problem with this job sometimes, and anybody, I know there's a lot of elected officials here, but it's so much worse when you're dealing with 119 other colleagues than when you're dealing with, you know, 6 or 7 or 5 or 4. We are often handed a bill and said, vote for it, yes or no. And, you may like a lot of it, a lot of what's in the bill, and may have a problem with other aspects. My big problem with that bill, and quite frankly, it's been my problem with a number of the housing bills, is that there's been an absolute unwillingness on the part of the authors, and Scott's my friend, but, I just don't believe that we ought to do anything to further incentivize construction in very high fire risk zones. It just doesn't make sense to me, given the way the climate crisis is proceeding, the way that, the amount of money we're having to spend, both on the utility side, on the liability side, and on the firefighting side. One of my big challenges with a number of the housing bills that have been passed out of Sacramento is that they're kind of one size fits all, and that they don't reflect the very different types of communities and scenarios around the state. And yet they've been flying through. And, I said to Scott, I'd love to vote for this bill. I really would like you to exempt very high fire risk zones, because in every other aspect, I think this is a good bill. And I'd voted for some bills in this area as well in the past, but he just said, listen, man, I don't need your vote. I'm moving forward on this. And, that's the way it works. I've done that before too, right? Someone will come to me, hey, can you make a change? I'll make the change if I feel it's reasonable or I want to. He doesn't want to, because quite frankly, he just is such a true believer on housing construction. But, from my perspective, it's foolhardy. And I just like, okay, I'm not going to vote for this. If you're not going to make that change. And that's what happened there.
Great, thanks. Okay, so you have two measures that are going to be on the ballot this fall. We talked about the first one already with regard to Article 34. But I wanted to ask you about the other one, which is a $15.5 billion climate resiliency bond. I think everyone understands the importance of investing in protecting our communities from climate emergencies. But can you describe how the money will be spent if the bond passes?
Yeah, thank you. So we just had a big discussion about this in caucus yesterday. So there are three major bonds that are currently proposed. One is the housing bond that was discussed earlier. Another one is an education bond, which includes, the Assembly side goes K through 14, the Senate side goes K through up to higher ed, including the Cal State and UCs. And then there's our climate bond as well. Ultimately, it's about wildfire preparedness and resilience, and about drought and water. And now all of these bonds are going to be scaled back. None of them are going to be the proposed size. In fact, we're basically being told that the total bond package is probably going to be restricted to about 15 billion. And so right now we're looking at 6.5 to 8.5 for this. It's not enough compared to all the costs we know that we're going to be incurring as a result of climate change in the long term as a state. But it's going to, there's a whole slew of categories that will help the state be more resilient in addressing drought, sea level rise, wildfire risk, urban heat island effect. There's some land preservation, conservation. There's money for the conservancies as well. So it's a wide range of projects, but it's all about increasing our resiliency and our ability to cope with the unfortunate inevitability of climate change.
Great, thanks. So we've got two Ben Allen supported ballot measures. We'll be coming back to take positions on these in a couple months. So let's remember the descriptions here for when we come back to that. While we're talking about energy issues, an audience member asked, why isn't the legislature forcing the Public Utilities Commission and other utilities to provide renewable energy at a discount to fossil fuel energy?
Yeah, there's been some work in this space, but we definitely need to be more aggressive. The Public Utilities Commission, I think, has been too cozy with the big utilities. And one of the many challenges we've been having is this kind of grand debate between some of the both fossil fuel, the fossil fuel industry, the utilities, and clean energy with regards to labor. And that's been a difficult tension in Sacramento, because a lot of the traditional energy companies have collective bargaining agreements. and a lot of the new energy folks don't. And so there's been a tension point there within the Democratic caucus, actually, quite frankly. But you know, obviously the federal monies that are coming down, a lot of the things that we've done have been really focused on electrification and clean energy investments and all the rest. But the utilities are they're very dug in. They team up with their labor partners, and they really push back hard, both in the legislature and at the PUC, when it comes to, you know, being more aggressive on clean energy. And I mean, even Dave Min had a wonderful bill that died in committee this week that sought to prevent the utilities from using ratepayer dollars to advocate in front of the PUC to keep their rate, to increase rates. Okay, you are paying in your rates right now for your utilities to go spend money on lobbyists and advocates to go advocate in front of the PUC to increase your rates. And when that, and Dave Min had a fantastic bill to prevent that from happening, and it failed by 1 vote in the Senate Energy Committee. So, you know, so there are a lot of headwinds in this space, including within our own party, and that's a lot of what it continues to be a challenge with regards to that question.
Okay, switching gears a little bit, last week in Santa Monica, a political action committee run by a Trump donor held a rally at Reed Park, where 4 of our incumbent city council members spoke out against the Department of Health's needle exchange program. The same council members voted to send a resolution to the county asking them to move the program away from the parks. So we had Supervisor Horvath here last summer and asked her to explain the rationale behind the program, and she explained it in detail. But I wanted to know your assessment of how this program runs and what role should the state play, if any, in balancing harm reduction programs like this one with the fears and safety concerns of residents.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, the state's, you know, the debate at the state has been, because we know how incredibly sensitive this can be for a lot of communities. The debate of the state has been really around how much kind of additional authority we ought to give to locals who want to expand access to these kinds of programs. And a couple of bills have made their way through, and Scott actually has done a lot of work in this space, Scott Wiener, and I supported a previous bill that he had that was ultimately vetoed by the governor. But you know, I think it's a really sensitive subject. I mean, obviously it's a political hot potato. There's a lot of good data to suggest these kinds of harm reduction models are effective. But I also recognize that, you know, there are some bad there's some examples of these programs that have not been well executed. We should mention that. So it's not just a matter of imposing the program and knowing that it's automatically going to work. You have to be really careful about how you implement. But at the end of the day, you know, it's what the debate in the state has been: how much should we be allowing local governments to expand these programs? And even Governor Newsom has, I think, gotten really nervous about having his name associated with it, because it is. I think it does. I think the challenge that the council is struggling with right now is, you know, is people feel, you know, people don't always want to get into the details of the way the program works, and they just say, oh, you know, you're allowing for unfettered needle use in our parks, and that nobody wants that, and that's not the program, by the way. So I think if we're going to do it, we really have to do it not only in a way that really adheres to the best practices that have been closely studied, but also finds a way to bring our community along. And I think that's been one of the challenges here. I know it's really hard to do, but it's about informing people, engaging people, and really doing a program that both will do the maximal good while also bringing our community along. And I think that's been one of the big challenges that Santa Monica has faced. I haven't gotten too deep in the weeds on this. I heard about the rally, and I heard about the council meeting a couple of weeks ago. You know, so I want to get more details as to what exactly has been going on here. But this has been something that's come up over and over again as cities have struggled to implement these kinds of programs. There is a major public relations component to this, and that it cannot be ignored.
Okay, thanks. So another audience member wrote in to ask. Well, it's not really a question. I guess it's just a statement. I'm gonna just read it directly quoting, your endorsement of George Gascon is ill-advised and shameful. His campaign premised on data and science, and the words data and science are in quotation marks, was false and misleading. Gascon's experiment has failed miserably. Our country needs a change, or our county needs a change. Now, I understand that you actually did not endorse DA Gascon yet, but now given the choice in the general election between Gascon and Republican Nathan Hochman, are you planning to endorse the incumbent this fall? And either way, what's your assessment of his job as DA during his first term?
Yeah, I voted for Chemerinsky. I mean, I gotta say, what's interesting about these positions is that there's kind of an ideological aspect to these decisions, and then there's also a management aspect. And I will say, I have talked to a lot of friends in and around the criminal justice world who have raised a lot of concerns about the DA's management style. And there just seemed to be a kind of a massive disconnect between his team and his office over at the district attorney's office. And so, for me, Chemerinsky represented someone who was progressive, but could bring a new, fresh voice to the conversation. So I don't know, where that questioner got the information about my position on this. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly very concerned about the opponent. I mean, I haven't given a lot of thought to what I'm doing on this yet, but so yeah, Hochman is not my guy. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right, so we're gonna open it up to some questions directly from the audience, unfiltered. Mitchell, I offered you the chance to ask the first one, so do you want to come up and ask it? I understand that you can speak loudly, but people on Zoom can't hear it, so you. Okay, well, people aren't going to be able to hear it on Zoom. That's why I want you to come up.
Oh, have you guys been able to hear me okay on the computer? Patricia, we'll let you speak.
Yes, Ben, we've been able to hear you just great.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Okay, great.
Hi, Mr. Allen.
Here's Mitchell.
Appreciate you being here. Yeah, but there's, going back to Wiener's housing project, and you mentioned you didn't vote for it because of fire. Building homes in fire areas. There's also associated concerns with housing and taking over agricultural lands.
Yeah.
Taking over the agricultural lands makes food more expensive.
Yeah.
And the commute in those areas, and by the way, of course, that is the reason there's housing going into those lands is because it's affordable. People are going out there. So what I'm trying to bring in and relate that proposal to not only agricultural lands and the fire lands, but the housing here in Santa Monica, north of Montana, Beverly Hills, with that bill, that would create high rises in those architectural significant areas. Also, right around here, we would be dealing with other problems such as density, losing sky. I would hope that you, in the next bill formation, that you would take these concerns into account. I think this all comes from supply and demand. And in the agriculture, wherever it is outside of this area, the lands are cheaper. That's like,
right,
wherever they're going.
That's right.
And I think that the concentration should go out into those areas that supply more density. Instead of R1 or R2, go to 3 and 4.
And is there a question in there? Do you know?
So you don't get agricultural spread. Now, the other issue is what
you just get to what the question was on that, or?
Well, it's related to also traffic congestion in what we have before us is pay to drive, which is ironic because it's based on you'll drive less, but you're still going to drive because it says pay to drive. Not only you're going to drive, but you're going to pay for it. Juxtaposition to that, what Mexico City and Jakarta has been doing is equitable, that you don't pay to drive. It's called the license plate traffic decongestion plan. You're on the environmental and transportation committee. I know you've been looking at this for a long time with wanting to do something for traffic congestion. Will you pursue the juxtaposition of those two plans? Because the pay to drive is before us. If you know it or not, it's before us in this large area of Santa Monica.
You mean the congestion
and the
pricing zone?
freeways.
The congestion pricing.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Please address that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So what's Mitchell's asking about, in Mexico City, for example, I don't know the Jakarta example as well, but I've spent a lot of time in Mexico City. The Mexico City model basically says that if your license plate ends with an odd number, you can drive on certain days, or an even number, you can drive on certain days. And if not, you can't drive. And it was something that they implemented because they just had such terrible congestion and pollution. So I have had some conversations about this. I mean, the challenge we run into is that a lot of people, in a city like ours really do rely on their cars, and they can't have two cars, right? Our public transportation system is much worse than Mexico City's, actually, right? Mexico City's got a really great metro that covers nearly all the city. So there's an alternative that people have with regards to the train. So as I've had conversations with people up at Sacramento and down here, there just doesn't, there's not a lot of interest with that particular proposal. Now, I think everybody's looking for ways to try to address the broader congestion challenges. I mean, it's part of why I've personally put a lot of personal political capital into transit construction. In fact, when the gas tax was up before for a vote that Jerry Brown really wanted, he needed a 2/3 vote. And most of the folks, there were some people that were holding out because they didn't want to vote for any kind of gas tax because they were anti-tax. I actually held out with Scott Wiener. In fact, the two of us and one or two other members said, we're only voting for this thing. They needed to vote. We're only voting for this thing if there's a significant portion of that money that goes to public transit construction. And as a result of us holding out, there's now $500, $600 million a year that's going for transit construction up and down the state. And it's helping to finance a lot of the metro projects here in LA. So, from my perspective, it's really, I've been putting a lot of time into trying to figure out ways to create more options for people so that they don't have to be kind of stuck in traffic. Part of that also involves having a safe transit system that people want to be, and I'm actually doing a bill right now with Santa Monica Big Blue Bus to allow them to, for people who are repeat offenders who create safety problems, to give the Big Blue Bus the ability to exclude that person from riding, because there's a very small but unfortunately really problematic portion of our population that makes the transit riding experience really dangerous for people. And it's part of why I've had tough conversations with Lindsay, and I've got to say I'm really glad that LA Metro, after a long time, stepped up and finally started really taking the safety conditions on the metro more seriously. We still got a long way to go. I see Jim shaking his head. But it was getting to be ridiculous. I mean, the amount of money that we'd invested in the subway, for example, and I have a lot of particularly female friends, but all sorts of friends, who would love public transit, had always ridden the train and then stopped in the aftermath of the pandemic because of how dangerous it felt. So anyway, so I that's where my focus has gone. But I'm very interested in other equitable decongestion proposals. The Mexico City proposal, I've spent time looking into it. I don't think we're going to be able to do it here. But if there's something that doesn't raise the same kind of equity concerns that would still have an impact on congestion, I'm all ears about it, because we've got massive problems here. I mean, every time you know, I get to go back and forth between Sacramento and LA, and Sacramento is just such a different world, you know, I mean, you really can go anywhere in town in 20 minutes. And our lives are so much more diminished. They're so much diminished by the traffic here. You know, the opportunities that exist in the city are so incredible, from food to sports and entertainment and culture and the beach and the mountains. And yet we're so restricted in what we can do because of how bad the traffic is. And so I agree. So it's it's something we got to work on.
Great, thanks. Craig, you're next, but first, Larry Gross had his hand up in the Zoom, so we'll go to him. Larry, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So I wanted to correct what appears to be your understanding of the lawsuit on Barrington Plaza, and also had a Ellis Act question about legislation. So you had referenced the 10-year mark on the Ellis Act, that people can get
five,
rent
right?
control, or the 5, and then there's various steps. The lawsuit has nothing to do with that. The issue for us is in the Ellis Act, it talks about your intent is, when you file, is to go permanently out of the rental business. We're contesting that based on documents we have from Douglas Emmett that shows for years now, they had no intention of going out of the rental business. And it's a matter of bad faith and intent that we're hanging our hat on. And so I just wanted to make clear.
Totally, but they are still, that's the whole point, right? They're banking on how on bringing people back after going back into the rental business after 4 or 5 years, right?
They're banking on a lot of things which we think are illegal and untrue. But I just wanted to make it clear what we're contesting and what we think we're going to prevail on.
Totally.
In regards to legislation, and I know we've talked about this in the past about how you don't think the political climate's up there, and I know legislators don't like to put forth bills that they know may not pass. Last time around with Alex Lee, who authored a bill on our behalf, and you co-authored, we got farther than we ever have had in the past. I want to remind you that it took the landlords 17 years to get Costa-Hawkins passed. And every year over those years, they kept introducing the same bill. And unfortunately, it was mainly Democrats. In addition to Jim Costa, it was also John Garamendi and Richard Alatorre. So it's important that we have legislation there that we can, just like we have the ballot measures now to do away with the Costa-Hawkins, we keep pounding. We have to do what the landlords did and pound them every single year and push this issue and keep it in the eyes of the state legislature. Because, you know, in LA, since 2001, we've lost 30,000 rent-controlled affordable units due to the Ellis Act. And we'll never get people off the streets into housing. We'll never address our affordable housing if we're putting more people onto the streets and losing more affordable housing than we build. So it's important, and that's why we're asking you to work with us to introduce something. And I know you're open to doing that.
Looking forward to talking to you about it. Yeah.
Okay, Craig, you're up next. Yeah. I mean, it's the way the computer hears audio. It's not about, we know that you can speak loud enough for this room. That's not contested.
In case you haven't heard, homelessness is a huge issue, to the point with which a candidate for mayor of Los Angeles ran under the platform that he would build affordable housing. He didn't win, but I think the people understood, you know, just how much of a benefit that was going to be.
Yeah.
And so in line with that question, I'm wondering if, you know, in order to leverage, you know, just how landlords, you know, treat tenants, you know, within this back and forth, has you or, you know, the policymakers up in Sacramento ever considered, as a means of combating homelessness, you know, what many progressive sociologists do in terms of housing cooperatives in that respect. Because as long as you throw money at a problem, you know, I mean, the problem doesn't seem to get worked, but there's a financial thing. But if we more or less look at some sort of program which puts people in respect of owning their own thing, then you would think that that would begin to solve that. I'm trying to get a sense of how policymakers in Sacramento feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the discussion of late has been in social housing, which is, you know, similar model. And Alex Lee actually did a bill, you know, last year or 2 years ago that I co-authored that is trying to expand, you know, access to those kinds of programs. The question has always come down to tensions with the typical bad guys in this area, and then money. But yeah, I mean, I think we need to be looking at all these kinds of tools right now, especially cooperative housing. I think it's a great idea. So I'll circle back with Alex and see where he is on the latest iteration of his work and see how I can support it and maybe get you guys in touch. So you could also talk about it. Yeah. But he's been really good in this space. Yeah.
So I'm gonna put on my Friends of Ballina Wetlands hat. 20 years ago, the state purchased for approximately $124 million the Ballina Wetlands, 600 acres. And thank you so much for your work on investing in state parks. But we have this amazing opportunity here. It's languishing under the EIRC
Lawsuits,
quote
right.
and lawsuits. But could you articulate your support for the restoration? And then how are you going to work to get the funding necessary to follow through once California Department of Fish and Wildlife are able to get their program going?
Yeah, well, I'm just hopeful that you know, obviously this project's gotten into a major legal battle. And so that's got to get resolved before anything is able. It's all done?
So, yeah, so the only thing they won on the 26 lawsuits was that the flood control, which is an issue in itself. So they're amending the EIR. That's one issue. It's going to come through. And so it's going to move forward. But the lawsuit is done. Courts made a final ruling. There's no more lawsuits.
Okay, all right. Well, I gotta catch up on all this, obviously. Yeah, look, I mean, my general philosophy has always been that, you know, getting to a point there where it can be a thriving place ecologically, a place where people can come and enjoy and learn, where kids can get to experience. It's one of the few places where we have some open space in that area. And there's some educational opportunities as well. And then of course, it's also a really, really important biodiversity hub, you know, for the birds, migration, you know, for a lot of animals and then a lot of flora as well. So, you know, it's obviously been an area of real kind of battle, and but I think we all hope that we can eventually turn it into a place that we can be proud of and that everyone's going to enjoy. Yeah, yeah.
I just wanted to run back to the Ellis Act issue for just a second, and I wanted to remind this group that Ben was actually of a huge help, along with former Assembly Member Bloom, in getting the only change we've had to Ellis in quite a number of years. And that was AB 1399 around 2019, which we actually originated that here in Santa Monica with some tenants advocating for themselves, bringing it to the rent board taking it to their staff, the staff taking it to the city, and then it ended up with in the good hands of Senator Allen and former Assembly Member Bloom. And that actually did pass, and the governor signed that. It was the first change. And what it said was that if you take all the units off, you have to bring them all back on. What they were doing was they were buying out tenants and clearing out most of the building. And those tenants who would not take a buyout were being Ellis'd out. So the last 3 or 5 units were being Ellis'd out. And then they would bring back all the units that were vacant and simply not bring back the 3 or 4 or 5 that had been occupied previously. And claimed that because there was no tenant, there was no harm. So again, to Larry's point, they were really, threading the needle on the intent of the law. And so that legislation really helped. And I just wanted to give credit where credit was due.
Thank you, yeah, thank you, appreciate it. Yes, do you want, Isabel? Thank you, Anastasia.
So first of all, I want to thank you for all your great bills and also for saying the names of them for my notes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so I wanted to ask you, I want to let you know, I'm not sure if you knew that besides the speed camera bill, we've also endorsed the 1053 on the follow-up on the plastic bags.
Good, thank you.
I've been really following the plastics issue, so I got the 54 endorsed, and I know this is the follow-up to
Yeah.
it, so we're following that.
Great.
Of all the bills you mentioned, I'm curious of what you think are either your most high priority or which are the ones that could benefit the most from our club's support? Because some, may not need the support or where we can make the most difference.
Well, you got your ledge hat on. I love it.
Yeah.
You're doing your job. I mean, look, obviously, end of the day, what in terms of where the club can be most helpful, quite frankly, is on the stuff that's gonna go on the ballot. Because in the end of the day, you've got mobilizing power, right? You guys are, you're a respected name in this area. And ultimately we're gonna make one of the big problems we have with Article 34, quite frankly, is that people, when they first hear it, you're gonna take away my voting rights, my rights to deny an affordable housing, low income housing, a unit near me. So what we find is that when it polls initially, it's we basically, a little bit of voter education goes a long way to help us. And so having the club's engagement and educational push would be really helpful on those ones. I think on the bill side, I got so many things I'm working on, but I suppose I'm probably most fired up about the extended producer responsibility stuff, because I've gotten so deep into that. And so the 2 bills on household hazardous waste probably is a big one. And it's a real area where there's massive toxins getting thrown into our both our waste management system and our water system. And I feel like we're getting to a point where we can really finally force the producers to actually take the pollution associated with their products into account when they're designing these things. And one of the ideas with extended producer responsibility is that they know their markets, they know their products best, and yet right now they have literally no accountability associated with where their products go. And so they can, you can design things so that they have a fighting chance of getting caught, basically leaking or being addressed or thrown away in a sustainable manner or not. And right now they have no skin in the game, and so we're trying to get them to have some skin in the game. So I guess that would probably be my, well, I mean, there's a bunch of things that are high on my list, but it's like choosing between your children, right? But I do think where the club can be most helpful is on the electoral stuff, on the stuff that's going to be on the ballot. Yeah.
Dina's up next.
Oh,
Sorry,
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Hey, Dina. Oh, yeah. Then he wanna. Okay.
Next.
Okay. Sorry.
So, you already know I asked you if you could co-author of AB 2013, the data transparency bill. Jackie,
That's your own one. Yeah.
And so you will?
I mean, I want to look at it, but it looks, I've learned, I will, it's like a 95% chance. One time I did agree to co-author something on a good description and it turned out to be totally different. Not that Dean would ever do this to me. So I've learned to be more circumspect and actually read the thing before agreeing, but it certainly looks good. I'm pretty sure I will.
Okay.
I'm almost certain I will.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So for next legislative
Yeah.
session, I
Yeah.
will build on that bill if we can actually get it passed this year.
Okay.
I know we didn't want to do an appropriation this year, so it's not going to appropriations. It's literally just an informational bill, and
Right.
it's for putting data transparency on the developers' websites. One of the things I had asked her about was possibly the California Privacy Protection Agency already is putting data broker information on the CPPA's website. And so it would be a really good space because there's thousands of AI developers everywhere, for one person to have to try to track down all of their information to put it in one central repository. But I can see strategically, we just need to get this first. How would it, one, would you be willing to work with us next year to work on, if we get this passed this year, to put it up on the CPPA's website or something like that? And what is a good argument to get them to spend money up front so that they don't have to spend a lot more money later? So, because nobody wants to spend on appropriate, I guess my question is, how do you argue for an appropriation? Thoughts?
Well, your hope is that we do that next year, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully the budget will be better. This year's just bad.
Okay.
So I think in a weird way that Jackie's bill is it's the right bill to do this year because it's low key financially. So, let's get it passed. I think your idea is a good one. Let's get it passed. And by the way, let's follow up on AB 2013. So we'll just make sure that we review it and co-author it. Yeah, so let's do that first, and then we're gonna have to make those arguments about how it's a wise upfront investment. Let me just say, by the way, Dina's been a great just dogging this issue in a really important way. I mean, the AI issue has been it was at the heart of the strikes this summer with SAG and WGA. I actually was just at the WGA talking to them a little bit about this stuff. But AI is obviously a very powerful and important tool, and it can bring, I mean, it already helps us in all sorts of ways. It's also got incredibly problematic implications. And Scott's actually doing a big bill on AI too, which merits examination. It seems good pro-consumer bill. I just voted for it in judiciary. So Scott Wiener's been doing some really good work in that space. But this is going to be something we're all going to have to really work on because there's massive intellectual property theft implications. It also, the pace of machine learning, and when I hear certain people talk about how let's just rely more and more and more, and yet you pointed out in your presentation some of the built-in weaknesses of the system, a potential collapse if we have such a feedback loop that doesn't involve real people. And I just don't think people think about this stuff. And I worry that we are moving so fast in a certain direction that we're going to make some mistakes that we're really going to regret. The caucus, Sam Altman came to meet with the Democratic caucus. We had it was an interesting meeting. By the way, he's certainly much, doesn't share all your skepticism of AI, but he shares some of it. And it was really interesting in a closed door session to hear some of his candid comments about some of the dangers. So, yeah.
Thank you. This is a bit off theme, I guess, of the other questions asked tonight, but what is your most preoccupying thought as a California senator when you're not actually in session?
Yeah, thank you. All right. I mean, when we're not in session, we're generally back in the district doing, community work. So, okay, I guess, okay. The first way, I guess I could answer your question two different ways. When we say in session, it sort of means when you're in season. It's almost like you're in baseball season and you're focused on the game tomorrow. And so right now we are in session, right? I was in Sacramento today and I'm going to be back there soon. So when you're not in session, you're down in your district doing community events and learning. I mean, touring and meeting with people, all that kind of stuff. You may have also meant just what do I think about when I'm not literally in the Capitol building, stressing out about whatever bill's in front of me. Okay. I mean, I'm really worried about the budget. I mean, I'm worried about the financial situation for the state. And that's my biggest problem, my biggest concern right now. In terms of the short term my job. Of course, I also worry about big problems. I worry about climate change. I worry about homelessness. I worry about, the future of American democracy. Those kinds of things too. But from a very Sacramento perspective, it's the budget right now. Yeah.
Question on producer responsibility.
Yeah.
So I work with various companies in brand protection. And so one challenge.
Brand protection?
Brand protection.
Oh, cool.
So we often deal with IP issues, but separately you have kind of companies, say, producing things, say a big filmmaker based in your district might produce things. And maybe they could do more, and I think it's good that they do more. But there are people that are selling things on online platforms from abroad where these producers have no responsibility. they're anonymous users going on Amazon, selling products that could be environmentally damaging, can be unhealthy to children,
Yeah.
can have all sorts of effects. And yet the platforms don't care. What can be done to hold platforms accountable to make sure that, when we make sure that companies that, are based here are responsible, that we make sure that everyone selling to the market is responsible?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it was something that we care, we share that concern, and it's why we built.
Dan, excuse me, I hate to be a nag, but could you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry, okay.
Thank
So the
you.
question was, it was a good question, a little in the weeds on the extended producer responsibility conversation, but just to reframe it. It basically was, there are all these platforms that sell into our state, folks, sending products in from other parts of the world, who don't have, who are much harder to hold accountable to kind of producer responsibility model. Right? I mean, manufactured in China that, that are really hard for us to track down or to enforce on. So it's why we, it's precisely why we actually, while the focus is on the producers, we hold everybody in the chain of custody responsible. So if the producer, so ultimately the platforms are also responsible here under the way we frame the bill. So, and that's going to have to be a lot of the work that Cal Recycle does is to make sure that we will hold Amazon and those guys responsible for ensuring that the folks that are selling into California on their platform are just in the same way that we've, they got to pay our sales tax, they got to meet certain safety standards, all sorts of things. They're going to have to be, they're going to be responsible for ensuring SB 54 compliance. It was a big deal, and they didn't like that, but it was part of the deal that we struck. But your question is absolutely spot on, because it was a major weakness in an earlier version of the bill, quite frankly. Right. Hey. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, kind of
Oh, okay. So I'm a teacher, and I am very concerned about housing, particularly as it relates to education. My kids that have, not my kids, but my students who've either experienced homelessness or on the margins of it, the learning loss is really significant. They have a lot of trouble focusing in class. And as eviction protections erode and stuff like that, if they could also lose access to their school, because then if they're not in the district anymore, if they lose their home, it's a domino effect. So having seen this up close, I'm wondering if there's any understanding of the learning loss of kids that are on the margins and have experienced homelessness in this wave of housing crisis, and if not, who do I talk to?
Does someone else want to be the nag this time?
So
Yeah,
the
sure, that was a great question, but we Zoomers couldn't hear it.
Yeah, so Brooke is a teacher and was just talking about all the learning loss associated with homelessness for kids that she works with. And where do you teach?
So I've been actually at both schools in the district. At the moment I've been in
Okay, so she teaches down in, in a big homeless community there. Yeah, so she teaches down in Venice, and she was just talking about, she was asking about the extent to which the learning loss associated with homelessness for these kids is brought into the conversation. And, I think look, it's like any of these problems. I mean, it is part of the conversation. It could be more a part of the conversation. It should be more part of the conversation. And it's a good point, because whenever we talk about homelessness, it oftentimes the kids are not discussed. Now, of course, there are all sorts of programs and social safety net programs that for the kids that don't exist for everybody else. But that doesn't mean that a lot of kids still don't get caught up in the system, and then they it must be impossible for them to live.
I know we can't work this. I don't know the details, but or sleeps at night, but I know he's some form of a house. I will just give him drawing paper and try to at least I expect him sleeping through a lot of class. But not having
And have you been able, I mean, is there work underway with social workers to try to check out this kid's housing situation?
When you get to that level of stress, once you know what happens physiologically when you don't have that rest at night and that safety, the fatigue that.
Totally. Oh, I get it. And I mean, one of the reasons why there's heightened mental illness on the streets is because the experience of being on the streets for as long as some people are there end up, it's the lack of sleep, the constant fear. But now there are the district. I mean, there are people who work to ensure that all the kids have housing placements. And the infrastructure is, I mean, it's not great, but it's much better. They're much more there's more availability for kids than everybody else. So I it sounds like, why don't you get in touch with our office, and I'd love to help with, we actually help with some of these kinds of things in the past. I mean, Venice is in our district, and 100%, but we'd love to help. We'd love to help. Totally, I get it. We'd love to help. And we've actually helped families find housing a number of times. We need to get that. I mean, the answer is we need to get that kid and all the other kids who come to school exhausted because they literally don't have a place to sleep, housing. We need to get them a bed and a safe, good place to be. So. Yeah, I get it. We will help you. And by the way, this club and SMER and a lot of the other groups that are around us have a lot of expertise in this space, getting people housing. So please reach out and let's get you the resources you need.
Okay, we've reached the end of the queue. Is there anyone else who has any burning questions? Oh,
yeah, I like his questions.
Yeah.
You're kind of like,
come on back up.
Like human interest questions.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. It's good.
Here, come, you can be on camera if you want to.
Right. If you do, through what avenues are you able to collaborate with US Congress?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. He was asking about the extent to which we collaborate with Congress. It's funny. We do stuff with members of Congress all the time, but not as much as you'd think. I kind of thought, we'd be rapping all the time, but they're just off in their own world fighting, fighting their fights out there, and we're actually doing stuff in the legislature. I mean, now look, we are there. It's usually on situations, incidents. If there's a federal program, especially, and it has to do with how do we implement it? How do we make sure we get federal money? Certainly, we get constituents who got a problem. They got robbed and they lost both their ID and their passport. Well, their ID is a state issue. Their passport's a federal issue. So we coordinate with the congressman's office to make sure that we can get, or if someone's having a problem with Social Security. There's a lot of social safety net programs that have a federal and a state component. Maybe it'll be the state acting as a pass-through. So there's times where we'll collaborate a lot with members of Congress on that kind of thing. And then we'll also touch base with them on policy stuff. I mean, sometimes we'll introduce bills that are either influenced by what's happening in the federal level or a repeat of the federal, but sometimes they're picking up bills that we do. And in fact, California has been such an important driver of progressive policy that a lot of the members of Congress look to us to vote for inspiration as a testing ground for all sorts of good democratic ideas. And so we'll sometimes get calls from them, hey, we really liked what you did on this. I want to introduce a bill on it. The sad thing is nearly always the good bills have no chance of passing there, right? Because it's just such a different political environment. But the federal government is the big dog in terms of money, governmental money, and they are the big dog. And one of the money, for example, I'm going to bring this up, right? And one of the real kind of challenges we have with single payer implementation for the state of California is that for it to pencil out, it requires significant federal waivers associated with the use of Medicare and Medicaid money. And and so, how could we, so that would be something we'd have to obviously work really closely with Congress about. But then the other question is, if we were to pass something that would rely on those waivers, then, you know, if there were to be, you know, how do we lock those in? How do we lock those guarantees in so that a new Congress or a new president who was not as inclined to help us, and in fact, might want to actively, aggressively attack us, you know, would, couldn't really screw us over financially and morally and policy wise as well. So, tax issues. I mean, there's so many areas of work, yeah, there's a lot of areas of work. We asked them for support for various district projects. I guess our concern is, just to try to help us, and not harm us, and I guess one of the big fears with if things go the wrong way with this upcoming election, there seems to be such a motivation and vindictiveness on the part of, Agent Orange himself and all of his people, that it really could impact our state. And I'll give you one very tangible example of how they did really impact us recently. And you would have thought that, the one thing that would happen if Republicans got in control of the House, that our taxes wouldn't go up. Well, our taxes did go up under these people with a Californian as speaker, because by getting rid of the state and local tax deduction that we were all able to deduct off of our federal taxes, this massive, it really harmed our competitive advantage and increased our taxes. And that was an example of how polarized things have become and vindictive things have become. So that's an area where, we're both, there are areas for real partnership, but also a certain degree of fear when it comes to Congress, because they've got so much power. And that's one area, for example, where they really wanted to stick it to us. And they really harmed California's competitive advantage. I mean, we've always had higher taxes or higher costs here. But one thing that we could always count on is that, higher income people they always knew they could deduct their state and local taxes off their federal form. So they really, but now that option's been taken away and by the Congress. And so that's just one example of how I really worry about what a Republican victory in 2024 might look like. And that's why we have to work so hard to ensure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah. So we're gonna close with one last question, but before we do it, I want to remind everyone there's still one more bill that we have to vote on after this that came off the consent calendar. So I don't want to see a mass exodus out the door like usually happens when we thank the guests. Okay,
What's the bill?
It is the one regarding Culver City School District. Okay, so Senator Allen, you've been in office in the Senate for 10 years. You've got 2 more years left. Then you'll be termed out. And we know that in 2026, we're already hearing about like 6 people who are running for governor, and Tony Vasquez announced he's running for treasurer. So I wanted to know if you wanted to make any news tonight and share what your plans are after you term out of the Senate.
I appreciate the question very much, and but I'm not ready to make news tonight. But I do look. I gotta say, I love this work. It's and I've come to believe in long-term limits, right? So I do think there's certain value in having about a little bit of churn and having not people die in office at age 95. But I do think that there's a real, one of the challenges with our current system is that once you actually get to learn about know what you're doing, you're out of office, because you're turned out. So I'd love to run again for Senate, but I obviously don't have that option. Maybe some people here are going to run. So I got to figure out the next move, and we're undergoing a really intense analysis right now, trying to figure out what that looks like. There's a lot of options that are on the table, and there's also life outside of elective office too, of course, too. But I really do enjoy the work, and I feel like I've developed a lot of expertise in a lot of different areas, and want to continue to serve in some significant capacity. So thank you for the question, and you'll know soon about what the plans look like. And let me just say, I know that's the last question, so I just appreciate this club very much. I appreciate all my friends here. Please do reach out to us if there's ways that we can help. And I really do want to partner with you on the political side in the coming year. There's a lot of important things on the ballot, most of which we've discussed, but some that we haven't. you know, the work of this club is so essential in helping to ensure that we play our part in helping to save American democracy. And I gotta say, you know, if you want my help in terms of sponsoring maybe some GeoTV stuff in Orange County, or maybe we can go to Arizona. I mean, there's a lot of work we can do to really increase our chances of some victories in November, because it's you know, back in the day, I thought you know, I really didn't want Mitt Romney to be elected president, but man, it seems so quaint that concern. You know, now I really am scared. I'm scared about the implications of what a bad election in November might look like, not just for our state, but for our country, for our world. And so I thank you all for the work we're all going to do together to ensure that this election is a bright moment in American history as opposed to a dark one. So thank you everybody for your time, and appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much, Senator Allen, and you mentioned the breadth of work and the breadth of expertise, and that's clearly evident tonight in all the questions you're able to answer on so many different topics. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you again soon. And as soon as you're ready to make that announcement, come back and let us know. Yeah.
And one thing I do want to say, I really do, it is a tiring job. And it has been 10 years. I can't believe it. But I gotta tell you, it is such a privilege and honor to have this job. I really, and I don't talk about this very often, but this was my home Democratic club that I came from, that helped get me elected to this position. And I don't take that for granted at all. Every day, as I walk by the Capitol, I look up there and I think, what a privilege it is to get to come and do work for this home community that I love so much, and work on all these issues that we all care about so much. And so I just want to thank you for the role that you played in my life and career as an organization and as a community. I don't take it for granted, and I really appreciate it very, very much.
I can't hear much of what Ben is saying.
He said, thank you. So
He said good things about us, Kevin.
Right. So thanks so much, Senator Allen. We really appreciate it. And now before we adjourn, let's go to the final bill to endorse. So Isabel, come on up. Craig, come on up. And I think Craig just has a question regarding the dates of this or something, but I'll let him ask the question.
Okay, go ahead and.
You can come all the way up. Let's get you on camera. Let's have everybody see you.
I have to find my notes. So.
Come over here. Let's let them see you on the Zoom.
The concern had to do with the dates that the school was closed, January 19th to January 21st. And it was due to COVID. Now, COVID lasted more than 2 days. So I'm wondering what it is about those 2 days, you know, that the school was at risk in terms of that. I need clarification on why these 2 days.
Let's see, is
I saw
Leah?
I saw her a minute ago.
I'm here.
Oh,
Well,
there she is.
okay, so Sam was the one who presented this bill, but he had to leave, so he's not
So
here.
Leah can probably address it.
Leah, do you know about this? Because you're from Culver City.
Yeah, they didn't have any substitute teachers. There were so many people out that they would have just had to sort of warehouse kids in the cafeteria.
Okay.
For those 2 days only.
Well, that was the crisis.
3 days, it was 3 days. 19th through the 21st.
It was a crisis point where they just didn't have any coverage for the kids.
All right.
Okay.
You wanna move?
Okay, so, yeah, so this is the bill,
All right, Craig.
we're trying to remove the fiscal,
Craig made the motion.
oh, he
so-
made the motion, okay?
Second by Anastasia.
Okay, all those in favor
Yeah.
of this Culver City school bill?
All in favor?
You can't quickly say what it is?
SB 1338.
That would briefly do what?
You wanna
Or
just state it? Maybe
Uh,
Janice has to
okay,
be-
I'll restate it. It basically,
Hands up if you're voting.
okay, all right,
No, you explain it to Janice. I'll count the votes.
yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Okay. It exempts them from the penalties for failing to have the requisite number of instructional days, because they had to close their schools for 3 days during the pandemic. And those fines, let me see, I think it's on this other paper. No,
We're voting even though we're not in Culver City, because this is happening at the state level.
Yeah, it's a state bill, so.
it's a state bill, but these, Culver City asked us to support them on this.
Okay, so we had 11 in-person votes. How are we on Zoom? Looks like there's 9. That brings us to 20. Okay, so we have 20 yes votes. Let's lower the hands on Zoom. Okay, and all opposed? Okay, and any abstentions? Okay, passes. So
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Remember yeah, Susan, come on up, and before anybody leaves, just remember the next meeting is gonna be May 29th. We're gonna have our debates for rent control board, college board, and school board, right here in this room on Zoom. We'll do our best to keep the sound good for everybody on there. And Susan, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I brought some postcards. GOTV is already upon us. And while we need door knockers and phone bankers to flip some congressional seats in California, we also need every means possible of contacting voters. So I have some postcards, and for our flippable districts in California, I've got Rudy Salas in CA 13, or Adam Gray in CA 13, Rudy Salas in CA 22. They've both been really good members of the assembly who got really close to winning last time, and they just need a little bit more voter contact. And then we've got George Whitesides, who's trying to flip the last Republican seat in Los Angeles County. He's trying to flip MAGA Mike Garcia, and we've got a couple more. Will Rollins, who's an LGBTQ member of the judiciary, or a member of the federal prosecution, who's a fantastic person who's gaining ground and could easily win in the Palm Springs area. And then there's one more person who I can't remember right now. But anyway, I've got postcards back there, and they're all ready to go in packs of 25. And I also can give you stamps if it will help you do them. So please come see me. Thank you.
And anybody who's watching on Zoom, or if you're watching on YouTube later and you want to do the postcards, you can either put it in the comments or email smdemocrats@gmail.com, and we'll connect you with this program. Just because you're not here in the room doesn't mean you can't do that work.
John, I don't think I'd be allowed because I don't live there, right?
You can postcard, Christine. We can get them to you, just because.
All right, because I do it here, in fact.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll reach out. We'll be in touch. Okay.
I'll send you my address. John, do you sell T-shirts, by the way?
For the club?
Yes.
Logo? It's something we need to look into. We would love
All
to.
right, because I'd be interested in buying one if you ever have them.
Okay, good to know. We'll keep you.
I'll send you my address, John.
All right. Sarah has an announcement.
Thank you. Just a quick, well, 2 announcements. One is the cookies are great, and you should come in person so you can eat them. And the second is that if anyone's interested in speaking with the state superintendent Thurman, the California Democratic Party's Children's Caucus is meeting with him at 9:30 a.m. this Saturday on Zoom. Please contact me and I'll get you registration too. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks so much for coming. See you next month.
Bye, everybody.
It's endorsement season.
Good night, everybody. Have a good week and a weekend.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Nice to meet
everyone.
you, Patricia.